Hello, good evening. Thanks for being with us tonight. I am Blake Burman. This is indeed The Hill on News Nation. Examining their options. That is the plan out of the White House tonight after a federal judge blocks multiple National Guard deployments.
I'll tell you what the problem is. Crime. Okay, crime. It's a huge problem in Chicago. It's called crime. And we want to put out the crime, and they want to inflame the crime. And why they want to, I don't know. But it could be that Pritzker is scared for his life.
We are live from Chicago, live from Portland, Oregon, as well in moments with the blue state pushback. All of this comes as the federal government remains shut down. There is a vote happening on the Senate floor at this very moment. It's expected to fail, but you never know in this town. When the numbers come in, we'll let you know as soon as it happens. Plus, it is day one at the Supreme Court. What the president said today about their decision to deny Ghislaine Maxwell's appeal, and what he said when asked if a pardon could be on the horizon. Also, speaking of horizons, is a robot tax in our future, a robot tax. Elon Musk posts this video right here of his Optimus Prime learning Kung Fu. Why a big name lawmaker is now saying the robots should pay up to Uncle Sam. But first tonight, here from The Hill, troops on pause, lawsuits are flying, and so was the tear gas over the weekend. The state of Illinois and the city of Chicago today suing the Trump administration. A day after a federal judge in Oregon told the president he cannot federalize troops in that state or send in the National Guard from other states. So today, Illinois and the city of Chicago suing the administration over the president's desire to send troops there. The Illinois governor, J.B. Pritzker, vowing this afternoon to fight in the courts.
The state of Illinois is going to use every lever at our disposal to resist this power grab and get Noam's thugs the hell out of Chicago. I'm not afraid. I am not afraid, and I won't back down.
The White House obviously telling a much different story. Federal officers and facilities need support, they say. And the president just wants to keep American cities safe. That's his message. We heard it from him just a little while ago. Chaotic and dangerous scenes, though, over the weekend at points. Federal agents deploying tear gas in both Chicago and Portland, Oregon, as ICE officers carried out enforcement activities. Our Nancy Liu, live in Portland, Oregon, our Alex Capriello in Chicago with the latest there. But we begin tonight with our Kelly Meyer over at the White House with how the administration is responding tonight with all that as the backdrop, Kelly.
Yeah, a lot of back and forth here, Blake. President Trump pushing ahead with his plan to deploy National Guard troops to Illinois. That's moving forward tonight. A federal judge declining to block the deployment. That comes as President Trump today didn't rule out invoking the Insurrection Act to get around the courts. The president saying a short time ago he'd, quote, do it if it was necessary, adding, we have an Insurrection Act for a reason, he says. President Trump called the protest outside ICE facilities, quote, criminal insurrection. Take a listen.
Portland is on fire. Portland's been on fire for years, and not so much saving it. We have to save something else, because I think that's all insurrection. I really think that's really criminal insurrection. So I appreciate the question. These are unsafe places. We're going to make them safe.
Now, today, as you mentioned, Blake, the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago filed a lawsuit to stop Trump from sending 300 troops to the Windy City. And a federal judge temporarily blocked Trump from deploying 200 National Guard troops to the city of Portland. That judge was appointed by Trump during his first term. And today, Trump said that judge, quote, lost her way. Now, Trump isn't ruling out heading to more cities, saying, quote, we're going to go city by city, he said. Alex Capriello is in one of those cities, Chicago, where he joins us now. Alex.
Yeah, hey there, Kelly. So federal agents here in Chicago are claiming that they are constantly under attack when it comes to protesters who are angry about the federal immigration enforcement that's going down here. The federal government pointing to 3 separate incidents that evolved over the weekend, one in which a woman was shot, where federal agents say they had to defend themselves using their guns against her in their attack. The Chicago Police Department now being questioned in it all after new audio obtained by NewsNation appears to show the chief of patrols asking officers with CPD to stand down from protecting those agents. The superintendent with Chicago police saying that's just not true and that his officers were around for all three of those incidents. All this happening while that lawsuit does play out in courts filed by Governor J.B. Pritzker against the deployment of National Guard troops from Texas coming to both Oregon as well as here in Chicago. Of course, this is something that the Trump administration is going to fight. A federal judge today saying that she cannot actually file that temporary restraining order at this time. Let's head to Portland where we find Nancy Liu.
And bye. Yeah, Alex, here at the ICE facility in Portland, a quiet afternoon, but to my right, we have about a dozen anti-ICE protesters. The latest court ruling means still no National Guard presence here, which some residents say they welcome. The military maneuvering follows yet another volatile weekend here in Portland. On Saturday, multiple arrests amid multiple rounds of tear gas, pepper balls as anti-ICE demonstrators faced off with federal agents and officers. And at times, they faced off with pro-ICE demonstrators out to show their support here. All the while, expectations that the Guard would be arriving squashed by the temporary restraining order sought by the state. Now, according to the White House, this ICE facility has been under siege by anarchists for over 100 days. You heard the president a short time ago calling it an insurrection. And Blake, as you know, always fairly calm here during the daylight hours. It is after dark when things become uncertain around here. Blake?
Stay safe out there. Our Nancy Liu in Portland. Thanks to our Alex Kapp in Chicago. Kelly Meyer over at the White House as well. Thanks all with us now. Come on in. Kevin Kiley, he is a Republican from California, member of the House Judiciary Committee as well. Congressman, thanks for being back with us tonight here on the Hill. There's so many different stories with this in so many different states. Your state of California, obviously, one of the backdrops there as the president wants National Guard troops headed up to Oregon. You want that to be the case?
Well, I'd like to see there just be more cooperation across the board. The reality is that you do have very high crime in a lot of American cities, and you also have grave threats to ICE officers that we've seen across the country. And so I think it would be great if the likes of Gavin Newsom or Pritzker or the elected officials in Oregon and other states would welcome this sort of help rather than turning it into an opportunity to have conflict with the administration. I
hear you on the welcome part from those governors, but what about the decision from the commander-in-chief to send or to want to send troops from your state to other states? How does that square with states' rights, which I know is something that's big in the Republican Party?
Well, again, I think this is something where it'd be nice if there was a willing cooperation. We send folks to other states all the time.
But there's not, right? But there's not, and that's kind of the backdrop that we're in right now.
Right. That's right. So, it's an issue that's being tested in the courts right now. It'll go up to the Ninth Circuit. I will say that, when the National Guard was used to calm down the riots in Los Angeles, the governor went to court there as well, but the Ninth Circuit actually ended up siding with the president, saying that there's this clear threat to federal officers and property there. So it's an issue that's being resolved in the courts. But again, I would like to see these governors say, we would like to have less crime like they're having in Washington, D.C. right now. That'd be a good thing for our state if fewer of our citizens were being murdered and robbed and assaulted.
Here was the president today, Congressman Kevin Kiley, with us here on News Nation. Here was President Trump in the Oval. I want to get your reaction on the other side.
We're going to make Chicago really great again, and we're going to stop this crime. Then we're going to go to another one, and we're going to go city by city. We're going to have safe cities.
We're going to go to another one, and then we're going to go city by city. How widespread do you want this to be?
Well, wherever crime is very high, if we can do something about that and have there be less crime, I think that's a really good thing. In California, we have very high crime rates in cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco, certainly Chicago. We were just in the Judiciary Committee. And there is this sort of proof of concept in D.C. right now where you had more of a police presence and it served as a deterrent. and folks are a lot safer there now. Now, there is a legal issue, of course, when it comes to if this is going against what the local authorities agree to. And again, that will be tested in court. I think it's a somewhat different issue than we had, for example, in Los Angeles, where you had federal property and federal officers and the enforcement of federal law that was at risk. So ideally, this is something that actually we can work together on. It should be something that should be bipartisan across jurisdictions, that we want to keep Americans safe.
Kevin Kiley's a Republican from California. Thanks for being with us. I know we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right. With us now, Yemisi Egbawali, former press office chief of staff in the Biden White House, and Jesse Weber, NewsNation legal contributor, host on the Law and Crime Network. Jesse, hello. Yemisi, hello. Jesse, if you don't mind, we'll go ladies first here.
Sure.
Yemisi, you just heard the congressman there from your side of the aisle. Here's what I saw from Gavin Newsom. America is on the brink of martial law. That was a post of his over the weekend. You good with that?
Well, I think what the governors of Illinois and Oregon have done, I think a lot better than Newsom, is they haven't really played into the political theater that Trump is doing. Trump described Oregon as war ravaged. He dehumanized the communities that were there, and if anything, inflamed tensions that weren't even that high to begin with. I think that Pritzker and Kotek have done a really great job of trying to operate from a place of governance. We know that the governor of Oregon tried to exchanged text messages with the president and had been promised a conversation, and then he announced that he was sending in troops. We know that this is legally and politically weak because the judge was able to block it right away. I think ignore the tweets, ignore the language, and just focus on the state that you represent.
Yemisi teed you up there, Jesse. Is this going to the high court when it's all said and done?
It may very well, and what they do, tough to say. You've seen the Supreme Court recent decisions arguably expand the power of the president, the immunity decision, limiting the power of lower courts to issue injunctions that kind of tie what a president can do. But look, this is a challenge. This is a challenge for the president. And you heard it a little bit in the opinion today, which, by the way, was from a Trump-appointed judge. And basically what the argument was, to mobilize National Guard troops, particularly from another state to go into another state, it allegedly violates federal law. You're really only supposed to do it if there is an insurrection, if there is a rebellion, if really federal forces can't do their job, dire consequences. And you mentioned it before, Blake, and I'm so glad you did. The idea of the 10th Amendment, state rights. They have a right to control and manage their own affairs. They have a right for self-autonomy. They have a right to control their own National Guard. And the judge in one of these recent decisions says what the president is doing on its face looks like it violates the Constitution and violates federal law. We will see what happens if this advances to a higher court or the Supreme Court. But I have to say, at this point, it appears to be a challenge for the president.
All right, we'll leave it there. Jesse, thank you, sir. Yemisi, see you later in the show. Pop up the Senate floor real quick, because we have a little news that just came in here inside that building behind me. There is the vote in the United States Senate to keep the government open. As we've seen over the last week or so, there's the Democratic proposal in the Senate. It goes first, and then the Republican one after that. As expected, the Democratic proposal to keep the government open failing. Basically right down party lines, are pretty close to it. The Republican one should come up next, and as we believe it, that will go down as well. Day 6 of the shutdown, and our coverage continues here on News Nation. All right, still to come tonight here from the Hill with all the news, all of it, including surrounding Jeffrey Epstein. Will there be a pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell? The Supreme Court with a ruling today, and the president was asked about it just moments ago. I thank you for being with us tonight here on the Hill. I'm Blake Burman. Other side of the break in 4 minutes, as we also keep our eyes on that building right there. The United States Supreme Court today deciding that it will not take up Ghislaine Maxwell's request for an appeal. This on the first day of the High Court's new session. Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's former associate, serving a 20-year prison term on charges including sex trafficking. Her lawyers had argued that she shouldn't have been tried or convicted. In the Oval Office today, President Trump asked if a pardon is on the table. And this is how he responded.
I haven't heard the name in so long. I can say this, that I'd have to take a look at it. I would have to take a look. Did they reject that?
She wanted to appeal her conviction.
And what happened?
They said that they were not going to hear her appeal.
I see. Well, I'll take a look at it. I will speak to the DOJ. I wouldn't consider it or not consider it. I don't know anything about it. So, but I will speak to the DOJ.
The Justice Department had encouraged the Supreme Court not to wade into the case. With me now, Scott Bolden, former D.C. Democratic Party chairman, NewsNation political contributor, and Bill McGinley, former Trump White House cabinet secretary. Happy Monday, gentlemen. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Why didn't Trump just say no?
Because he wasn't prepared for the question. He's never going to just take
Why didn't Trump just say no?
What's that?
Why didn't he just say no?
Because he says he's going to talk to the DOJ. The DOJ told the Supreme Court not to get involved. The DOJ is going to say no, and he'll comply with that.
Trump loves himself and can't say yes or no, and he wants to look at everything. But what preparation, Bill, do you need when Ghislaine's name, Maxwell's name comes up to be able to say whether I'm going to pardon one of the greatest sex traffickers in the history of America? The answer should be no. And he just can't bring himself to say that. He put her in minimum security prison now. It's easy to anticipate that at some point in time, as long as she keeps saying that Trump's not in the files or that Trump isn't in there in a negative way in these files, then good things are going to happen for her. And he thinks he can get away with it because MAGA isn't going to leave him over this issue.
I got to respond to that. There is no evidence that the president did anything wrong.
I didn't say there was.
But you keep bringing it up as if he's part of some sort of conspiracy down there. I know it's a Democratic talking point.
Well, Maxwell said he wasn't.
The House has been bringing witnesses before the committee. Everybody's coming out and saying nothing about Trump. And if the DOJ under Biden had anything on Trump, it would have come out before the 24 election.
Then there was this. As a part of that whole response, Bill and Scott, the president volunteered this information.
I'll look at it. I have a lot of people who have asked me for pardons. I call him Puff Daddy has asked me for a pardon.
But she was convicted of child sex trafficking.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to take a look at it. I have to ask DOJ.
All right, so in the middle of the Maxwell answer there, he all of a sudden brings up that Diddy asked him for a pardon. This had been, I believe, like TMZ might have been the first one to put this out there, that this was a possibility. What would you tell Trump here?
Don't give it to him. Don't give it to him. Don't even commute. Let him serve the sentence. And I think that's what Trump is, Diddy was just sentenced to I think it was over 4 years.
Over 4 years, yeah.
Yeah, and I think Trump is not going to interfere with that case. Diddy's going to go to jail. He's going to serve.
Well, what you going to do with Maxwell then? Would you give him the same advice?
Say no.
Okay, so here's what's really interesting about that clip from a legal standpoint is that the president is publicly telling you he's going to consult with DOJ. That's highly inappropriate, or at least non-traditional, because normally DOJ prepares these various requests. The submissions can be very complicated and long, and then they bring him this material to talk with him, or they make recommendations. Here, Trump has not done that at all in his two terms so far. He has just decided who he's going to pardon and who's not going to pardon without the background.
They're going to follow the proper protocols.
They never
DOJ
do.
Pardon Counsel will send it over to the White House counsel's office, who will look at it. If they think that it goes to Trump for his consideration.
Case. You'd agree not in every case.
It didn't happen in Biden's case. Biden pardoned thousands, including violent criminals. And now we know that they didn't follow the proper protocol.
The substance of it. I'm talking about the process, the fact that you have a president.
I'm talking about process as well.
With DOJ.
Right. And then there's this as well. I mentioned it was the first day of the United States Supreme Court term. Going into it, there was news about the person who was convicted of trying to assassinate Brett Kavanaugh. 8 years was the sentence. The Attorney General, Pam Bondi, basically saying the other day that they're going to appeal this. We will be appealing the woefully insufficient sentence imposed by the district court, which does not reflect the horrific facts of this case. What's going to happen here?
I think the DOJ is going to appeal, and I hope that they get a tougher sentence for this guy. We need to send a deterrent message. We need to end this political violence now. If you're going to engage in political violence and go after public officials, you need to serve the time. and it needs to be an appropriate amount of time, not some reduced sentence because the judge.
I did a double take, Scott, when I first heard 8 years.
Yeah.
Trying to assassinate a Supreme Court justice and then 8 years and maybe you get out early because of,
Well, it sounds really bad, but that 8-year sentence, as I understand it, is within the federal sentencing guidelines. The 30 years being at the top end and even lesser being at the bottom end. And here, the act was not committed. This was an attempted assassination. I'm not belittling it at all. What I'm saying is it's going to be very difficult for the Court of Appeals or even the Supreme Court to overturn a sentence that's within the federal sentencing guidelines. We'll have to see.
If we're going to get out of this cycle of political violence, those who engage it, plan it, finance it, and coordinate it are going to have to be held accountable.
That sentence won't change that. What we need to do is consultants like us, as well as elected officials, need to modulate their terms, right? And consider whenever they're in debate, what nut is out there listening to us and then going and taking on a political agenda
The
of their
message
own.
needs to be sent. It needs to act as a deterrent.
We'll have you back later in the show.
Won't be overturned.
We'll talk about what's going on in Portland and Chicago. Bill, Scott, two of the best legal minds in this town. Thank you both. Appreciate it. Still to come, day 6 of the government shutdown. There is a vote taking place. Let's show the House floor or Senate floor right now, because there's a vote taking place right now on the floor of the United States Senate. We do not expect it to pass. But in the middle of all of this, I'm going to explain to you on the other side of the break why one of the biggest names in politics is saying, you know what? Let's talk about a robot tax when we return. All right, 6:30 on the dot here in Washington. Live look at the floor of the United States Senate at this moment. The Senate just moments ago failing again to pass a resolution to end the government shutdown. They're doing two things here. First off, voting on what the Democrats want. That didn't pass. And then coming up right now, there's basically a test vote on what the Republicans want. That, too, is also expected to fail. Day 6 of the shutdown. We keep our eyes on what's going on there on the Senate floor. Some possible light, though, maybe? We'll see. At the end of the tunnel, President Trump saying this afternoon that he's open to negotiations with Democrats on health care.
We have a negotiation going on right now with the Democrats that could lead to very good things.
What kind of
And I'm talking about good things with regard to health care.
Are you speaking with Democratic leaders? What kind of negotiations?
Well, I don't want to say that. But we are speaking with the Democrats.
Our Joe Khalil, live up on Capitol Hill with the very latest. So, Joe, it looks like we're going to be, I think, 0 for 6 at this point here in a few minutes, right? 3 times, 2 different votes. Both sides aren't talking. Stalemate.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. We're watching this vote now play out, but it doesn't look good for passage just yet. There's been virtually no movement, like, on either side. There was some hope at the comments President Trump made just there, but we asked Hakeem Jeffries, a Democratic leader, just about an hour ago, whether he is talking to the White House, anybody at all in the administration. He said flat out, no, those conversations are not happening. Take a listen. You were saying you've had no discussions with the White House at all. Do you know of any Democrats that have spoken to President Trump at all on this issue?
I do not know of any Democrats who have spoken to President Trump or members of his administration on this issue of reopening the government, enacting a bipartisan spending agreement, and addressing the Republican health care crisis.
So, Blake, if you're looking for any sliver of hope that one side or the other might come together and have a breakthrough, we did talk to Leader Thune today, and we asked him what the appetite is to work on health care among Senate Republicans. And this is what he told me. He said it's a mixed bag. He said there may be a path forward. A lot of it's going to come down to where the White House lands on this. There are some people out there with some actually good ideas. Unfortunately, they're not getting a chance to get heard while we're stuck here. So certainly, Blake, he's not closing the door to negotiations if the government reopens. It's just that those conversations don't appear to be happening right now. But again, some hope if you want to see it that way.
Our Joe K live in the Capitol hallways. Again, that Senate vote, when we get the final number here, we'll bring it to you the second it happens. With me now, Mike Herodopoulos. He is a Republican from the state of Florida, member of the House Financial Services Committee. Congressman, thanks for being with us tonight.
Great to see you again.
You're one of the few folks in the House in town. Does President Trump need to pick up the phone? Does he need to call Hakeem Jeffries? Does he need to call Chuck Schumer and say, let's get this done?
Well, I think the clear answer is, why won't the Democrats just keep the government open? We're all open to negotiating on these Obamacare issues. And let's also recognize this. It's such a joke when you hear Jeffrey say Republican health care crisis. They created Obamacare. They increased them dramatically during COVID. And now we're in a situation where we're negotiating a bit on that. But why not open the government? I mean, we agreed to their terms where they wanted to have this CR through November instead of January. We agreed to their terms to be a clean CR, meaning no additional issues. And they're the ones refusing.
Why not negotiate?
I'm not sure what they want to negotiate, because you saw their proposal is, let's spend another $1.5 trillion. Let's give Medicaid and healthcare services to illegal aliens. Let's allow people who no longer qualify to stay on Medicaid. Let's allow people who don't want to work to go on Medicaid when people are paying $1,500 a month. I don't think that's a negotiation. I think it's a ransom note to say it's $1.5 trillion, or we're going to take our ball and go home. That's my opinion.
You brought up health care. There are 1.45 million people in Florida. I don't know exactly how many in your district, but 1.45 million in the state of Florida who use the Affordable Care Act, who, if these subsidies don't get figured out in one form or another, the prices go up, the premiums go up. That's just a fact. Given 1.5 million people basically in your state rely on these subsidies, are you for extending them, or does that not align with conservative principles?
Well, let me take one step back. I think it's only fair. One is, remember, these were radically increased during the COVID Biden years. They put them in place. So that's one factor. The other factor is that you have to remember that people who are not in the system are paying $1,500 a month, while other people are getting subsidies. Let's make sure that the right people are getting help, the truly in need, kind of like we do with Medicaid.
What if they come to you? What if Speaker Johnson comes to you and says, Herodopoulos, you in for extending this, or no?
Well, I'm for reforming the system so that we don't have the waste, fraud, and abuse that we showed in Medicaid. The same thing does happen here. And one of the things that a lot of the viewers don't know is that if you make $600,000 a year in Arizona at a family of 4, you get subsidies. That's really who we're giving a subsidy to? That's way too high.
What about in Florida, though?
Well, again, one more thing on this is Obamacare, they said, would reduce cost. Has that happened? Absolutely not. Why do we need such big subsidies? It's because Obamacare has been a failure. They have too many mandates, and it doesn't help people who are truly in need. All it does is really help out insurance companies when you think about who gets the money directly.
All right, another story that fascinates me. I probably talk about AI more than anyone in this time slot on television. There was a story today, Bernie Sanders, top Democrat on the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee. As all this is going on, he put out a report today that 100 million jobs will be replaced in America by AI over the next decade. And he called for 5 things. And one of them is a tax on companies, essentially a robot tax on large companies. Here's what he said. Instead of providing billions in tax breaks to companies that are throwing workers out on the street and replacing them with new technologies, we should enact a robot tax. You think a lot about AI. What about that idea?
Bad idea. As usual, look who's promoting it. It's a person who believes that people aren't taxed enough in America. He's literally trying to come up with a new tax scheme in his idea. The problem with our government right now is we are overtaxed in a lot of things, and we overspend on a lot of things as well. But Bernie Sanders' reflex is always more taxes, more regulations. We have to move towards a modern government. One of the things that I am working with Democrats on is AI. As you know, we convened Sam Locarno, a Democrat out of California. He and I have formed a group that we meet regularly and hear from the AI leaders around the world what we need. The biggest challenge right now is the issue of energy. If we're going to beat the Chinese in AI, we need the energy necessary to fuel AI, because, as you know, it takes 9 times more energy than conventional computing.
What do you think about when you see this video? That's what Elon Musk posted over the weekend. That's the Optimus Prime.
Wow.
Like, is that our future?
Well, I think that in a lot of ways, we know that how robotics have changed the way that we manufacture around the world. And I think some of the realities these are part of it. But remember, there's a thing called sales tax. When you buy something, that's what's the tax.
There's also,
again, Bernie wants to find a new tax for everything.
There's also in Florida, like, hotel taxes. I know when I go down there, I get a big line item. So you can tax a whole bunch of things, which I guess this concept is why I ask, because it doesn't
every time you tax something, you slow down its progress, as you know. And when it's not working well, you subsidize it. That's the conversation about healthcare. This is Bernie Sanders saying, let's let China win, because when you start taxing robots, they're going to go somewhere else.
All right. Congressman Herodopoulos from Florida. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. You as well. Still to come. Other side of the break. The White House defending the National Guard as more blue cities and blue states fight back.
Why should they be concerned about the federal government offering help to make their cities a safer place?
So how about this question? When the National Guard goes in, if the courts allow this, should they stay for days and weeks? Or should they stay for months and years? The White House kind of asked that question today. I'll show you what they said.
A government shutdown can't stop the Hill. Trusted by millions, thehill.com is your window into D.C. with breaking news and exclusive content, helping you navigate the shutdown and its impact without the finger pointing. Trusted, credible, nonpartisan. Thehill.com.
All right, welcome back here to The Hill on News Nation. The press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, asked earlier today if citizens, really the question was if Democrats should be concerned about the National Guard maintaining its presence in American cities. That's even after the apparent success, like the kind the administration claims here in Washington, D.C. And this was her response. Watch.
Why should they be concerned about the federal government offering help to make their cities a safer place? And the president, all he's trying to do is fix it. Look at Washington, D.C., and it's a proven system that works, and the president wants to make America's cities safe again.
Well, the California governor, Gavin Newsom, seemed to be watching that same press conference. He responded shortly after with this. Caroline Leavitt admits Donald Trump wants the military to continue to take over American cities across the country. Do not allow them, he says, to normalize this. Now, we know what goes up must come down, right? Sir Isaac Newton helped us with that one a long time ago. But when it comes to the National Guard potentially being deployed in American cities all over the country, we don't necessarily know if what goes in must come out. And after how long? Are we talking days, weeks, maybe years? Full panel here with me now. Scott Bolden back once again. News Nation political contributor. Annalise Keller is a Republican strategist. Yemisi Egbawali was the chief of staff in the Biden press office. And Bill McGinley, former cabinet secretary in the first Trump administration. Hello to you all. Happy Monday.
Hello.
Nice to have you all in. I thought that exchange was fascinating, Annalise, because the question was phrased, why should Democrats be concerned? And Caroline Leavitt, you heard the response basically saying they shouldn't be concerned. You know, we have the blueprint, she says, of Washington, D.C. working. But I think it gets to the point of if the president is successful legally, how long do you want the National Guard staying in Portland, staying in Washington, D.C.? They're still here. Staying in Chicago, Memphis, et cetera.
Well, I think it's important to remember there's two different things going on. There's the president deploying Guard troops for crime, for generalized crime, and then there's also this issue of federal buildings, ICE, protests. So I think it's important to think about those two things. But speaking for myself, someone who is a resident of Washington, D.C., I live in Southeast, take the metro every day, I feel safer with the National Guard here, but I don't think it's a long-term solution to the issue. So I do think that, you know, while it's making me feel safer in the short term, I'm hopeful that that D.C., that the mayor and everyone here will come together and figure out a long-term solution, because it doesn't feel sustainable to me to have the National Guard here sort of indefinitely.
Should you feel concerned if they're there for fill in the blank, possibly even months at a time?
Well, I think it depends on where they're strategically deployed. I'm not so sure the rollout in D.C. has been as clear-eyed as I thought it might be when he first started. There are hotspots that exist within every city, and if you work with local electeds, you can figure out where there is a surge in crime. We have a fentanyl crisis in D.C. that I don't think has been properly addressed by the local leadership, and I think the National Guard standing outside of the Lincoln Memorial or in front of certain metro stations that don't really see a high turn of crime hasn't been that helpful.
But beyond here, the argument from the president is essentially, we got to make these cities safe. How do you counteract?
Well, I don't think the National Guard really is in that position regardless. I mean, if something happens right in front of them, what is their authority? You have to defer to the local police. I mean, in Washington, D.C., you call the police, it takes an hour for them to get anywhere, but I'm not really sure the National Guard is enforcing any kind of real safety.
So Bill and Scott, as I mentioned, are two of the best legal minds in this town. Roll the president real quick, and then I want to get the reaction.
We're going to make Chicago really great again, and we're going to stop this crime. Then we're going to go to another one, and we're going to go city by city. We're going to have safe cities. And it was so great that we started with our nation's capital.
Bill, lawsuits all over the place. Oregon, California, today, Illinois. is he going to be able to do that, go city by city as he wants?
Yeah, he's just like on all the other.
You think the courts will rule in his favor?
I think the courts will rule in his favor. I think he's going to initially lose at the district court, maybe even at the appellate court. This is going to the Supreme Court, and I think he's going to be victorious there. I mean, the crime epidemic that we've seen in a lot of these big blue cities are a result of Democratic politicians and Democratic policies, and basically they have demoralized the cops. They don't come in and get hired. Through attrition, they've lost. Like in Washington, D.C., they're supposed to have 4,000. They have 3,100.
Well, it depends. There's no invasion. There's no insurrection. So on the Title X, he's not going to win. I don't care whether he gets to the Supreme Court or not. And if it's not on the Title X, then the governors have to invite them, and those standards aren't being met, which is why you have the lawsuits, and he's winning those lawsuits, quite frankly. The way you solve crime is not just arresting people. D.C. has the highest incarceration rate per capita of any major urban center, and crime is still here. We're not a crime-free environment. You need crime prevention programs. This isn't much of an offer either, by the way. This is a forced-in federal takeover.
You don't think, last thought on this, you don't think this goes to the Supreme Court?
I think it goes to the Supreme Court, but I think it's going to be hard for the Supreme Court to give him that expanded executive power if the facts just aren't there, especially on the Title X.
Real quick, and then I want to, quick.
You got to draw the difference between Washington, D.C. and the other cities that they're talking about putting him in.
Enclave.
It's a federal enclave here, so that's why you see the National Guard on the streets. But in the other cities, they're limited to the federal property protection. It's the federal agents, DEA, FBI, and U.S. Marshals, the others that are supporting the police activities.
But they're present
Live
already.
look real quick at the Senate floor, because I'm just told now that Senate vote, the Republican one, basically to just keep the government funded for the upcoming 6 weeks or so, just failed on the Senate floor. If you've been watching us all hour, I was telling you that was going to happen. It's not like because I'm any sort of prophet or anything, to be honest. That's just the way things have been going. And the question, Annalise, as we now know on day 6, that the third time is not the charm, is how does this end?
This is going to end when Schumer decides that he's going to have fought enough and shown his Democratic base that he's put up enough of a fight. In shutdowns, you don't really win anything, so it's really hard to see that actual policy win. This is not a place to get a policy victory. But what I think is going to be the real tipping point is that October 15th day when people start, in particular the military, is expected a pay period, and that is going to really push this over.
So I think this kind of comes down to either one of two things. When Chuck Schumer basically says, I've had enough, I've made my point, or when Donald Trump picks up the phone and says, Mike, get it done. And I want Mike Johnson. And I wonder what happens first.
Chuck Schumer is fighting for the health care for Americans, especially those that make under $100,000, where a medical emergency could wipe out their savings. They could end up on the streets. Chuck Schumer is fighting for the American people. He's not going to acquiesce just because of a certain deadline.
Well, I think it's actually going to end when the moderate Democrats decide to abandon Chuck Schumer and vote with the Republicans to reopen the government so that they can have the negotiations. The president said from the Oval he's been on the phone with some of the Democratic senators.
No. He didn't specifically say that he basically said he was talking about health care, but the White House hasn't said that they were on the phone one-on-one, which gets to the point of when will he actually pick up the phone and talk to Democrats?
And I think that's when the dam's going to break and the government's going to reopen.
Okay. We're going to open it up when the fierce urgency of now affects the Republicans and the Democrats and this health care crisis that's on its way. If you sign the CR right now, then you have no leverage over the Republicans who passed the big ugly bill before without Democratic input, and now you want them to sign the CR and then promise to negotiate these health care benefits that are going to affect Republicans and Democrats.
Bottom line here, another day, 2 more votes failed. Day 6, tomorrow will be day 7. And right now, both sides aren't talking. They're dug in. Federal workers get paid in about a week or so. And as they bring up, that could be the moment of when push comes to shove. Thank y'all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here tonight. Still to come, other side of the break. All the talk about the shutdown, right? We knew this was happening. I told you it was going to happen. It did. So why was the president tweeting about or posting about something else last night? I'll show you what he said and my take on the other side when we return. All right, if you're just getting home, trying to catch up on today's top stories, here's what's trending right now on thehill.com. We are now at this phase of the government shutdown. Jeffries challenges Johnson to primetime debate about the shutdown. That's going nowhere. How about this story out of Indy that caught a lot of people off guard this weekend? Charges against the former NFL QB Mark Sanchez upgraded amid investigation into stabbing incident. Oof. And then in the sports world, staying there, the president also revealed this, that the date for that White House UFC fight will be his 80th birthday. There at the White House, June 14th of next year. For those stories and more, all you have to do is head on over to thehill.com. You can scan that right there for the Hill newsletter, which I write in every morning. It was in the newsletter this morning where I mentioned that today marks day 6 of the government shutdown. No off-ramp whatsoever. The vote just failed. Now the 5th longest shutdown you can see here since 1980. It impacts all sorts of agencies, brings issues before the White House. But President Trump focused on one in particular last night: housing. And here's what the president wrote in part, quote, he said, "Before I became president, OPEC kept oil prices high. It wasn't right." He goes on to say, but in a different form, it's being done again, this time by the big home builders. He goes on to say, "I'm asking Fannie and Freddie to get big home builders going, and by doing so, help restore the American dream." Now, Fannie and Freddie, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, essentially provide liquidity to spark the housing market. But how the president expects them to be the key to housing affordability, still very much TBD. Interest rates, not much different from where they were a year ago. And that's even with the Fed cutting rates recently. Now, at this point, in the midst of the government shutdown, we are still very much a house divided. Ultimately, this will get figured out. It'll get resolved. Then a housing issue of a different kind will still be present. The housing affordability issue. And that, then and now, needs attention. Coming up on Elizabeth Vargas Reports, she is following the shocking stabbing, we just mentioned it, and the arrest of the NFL quarterback, the former quarterback, Mark Sanchez. That's coming up seconds away here on News Nation. I thank you so much for watching us tonight here on the Hill. That big news moments ago, a live look at the Senate floor. It looks like nothing's going on, and let me tell you, nothing's going on. Thank you for watching us. We'll be back tomorrow. I'm Blake Burman.